Hi all. I've just had something dinner. I'm not really keen to test any concepts which I seem to be marketing at the moment, because I think I wouldn't give it justice. But I just want to briefly try and summarise the last few videos since the video which discussed the importance of checking forcing variations. Looked at example games on the ICC where I was losing, where actually I had winning opportunities. Now, I'm not a fan of Kotov. I'm not a fan of calculation. In fact, I hate the idea of calculating variations. In fact, it went against other ideas in the past, like ergonomics, not wearing yourself out. And I've had these sort of arguments with people like, FIDE Masters recently, he's saying people do calculate, they work really hard at the board, and he's right. And but my preference is to think strategically, look at the centre, the central control, good pieces, make sure all your pieces are in harmony, king safety, positional dynamic considerations strategically, not, seeing chess as like a maze, of variations, because computers are good at crunching through moves, if then. But this is perhaps very, very, very important, because I was going to talk about this idea of prophylaxis and accumulating advantages and how they contrast with each other as approaches, because Nimzovich, really emphasised prophylaxis. But how can you have prophylaxis if you're not aware of tactical vulnerabilities? How do you get an awareness of tactical vulnerabilities without being a computer? Well, what we can do as humans is look at the guaranteed if-then conditions, which is what I've been doing recently, as you've seen, I hope, in the last few videos. Here is, I was going to actually try and do a sort of interesting video on Fischer's games, and it will be very, very difficult to check. I was going to ask the question, how good is Fischer's docking computer? I only found one example. I've only looked at 2 or 3 games, but there's a very clear example of a terrible blunder by Mark Taimanov against Fischer. And obviously, if Mark Taimanov had been following Kotov's Think Like a Grandmaster, he wouldn't have been playing this Metzman move that he apparently played. He played a terrible blunder here. But this is what I'm saying. I just think it's a very expensive idea to try and treat ourselves like computers. So I think the primary focus, has to be strategic crush, being aware of, using positional sacrifices to emphasise things, aware of getting trump cards out of the openings, because the elements are all, battling out against each other. If you damage your pawn structure with double pawns, you sometimes get pressure, you get good rooks, you get good bishops. You can give yourself an isolated queen's pawn and have active bishops and rooks. So you can lose material and gain pressure and time. Kasparov has talked about the relationship between material quality and time. So really, I'm not at all, in general, an advocate of calculation. I hate Kotov. I've said that in the past many, many times. And yet, I seem to have put myself in a situation of recommending a very, very small subset of Kotov candidate move theory. And I've checked out the relevant book, the Think Like a Grandmaster book, the relevant part, where he's talked about the very simple calculations that are sometimes possible, when there's forcing moves. And he gave an Alekhine example, which I'm not going to show you. But the thing is, especially in 5-minute chess and maybe in the lighter time controls, that is the essential thing we should at least be trying to do, to look at the guaranteed if-then moves, the very forcing variations, and not just a way of documenting the position, but to actually, even if they don't work, this is where you test even outrageous but forced if-thens. It's like sending out probes into space. You're gaining insight. You're gaining insight into tactical vulnerabilities, and those insights can be proven very useful later when you pounce, like a cat. When the opportunity arises, when certain conditions are met, those insights you've just sent out, those probes, through the if-then considerations of guaranteed if-then moves, become very, very handy. But this is not a major tool. That's why I wanted to insulate it from this idea that I believe, proper, the general mode of thought surely has to be strategic considerations, the centre, pawn structure, gaining the two bishops, avoiding bad pieces, creating passed pawns, creating outside passed pawns, not leaving, strategic higher level considerations are what humans are good at. But by taking this also adding this concept of a docking computer seems to be quite useful and practical, even in the time constraints, as the last few videos have shown, of 5-minute chess. I'm only using this example, very simple example of a catastrophic blunder. If this was a 5-minute game, it would be a blunder. But what Mark Taimanov played now, I wonder if you can guess why it's a huge blunder anyway. If I give you 10 seconds, guess what Mark Taimanov played against Fischer. 10 seconds starting from now. But try and look at the guaranteed if-then sequence here. Okay, so work out why it's a blunder, exactly why it's refuted. So 10 seconds, or you might want to pause the video. Okay, he played rook takes f6. Now if we look at guaranteed if-then conditions, what is a guaranteed if-then condition here? If you do this, then this will happen absolutely. 10 seconds here. Okay, it's really the principle, not this particular example. This example is nothing. It's just a random game I've picked up. Check. So Fischer played check. The rook has to go back to f2, so the then is forced. And now another guaranteed if-then condition. You just throw in another check. And white is losing the rook. So black won. Mark Taimanov had to resign. This is Vancouver, round 5, 1971. I think candidates, believe it or not, a candidates match. Maybe he was just, I don't know, his nerves got the better of him. He was playing for the pride of Russia or something. But anyway, I just wanted to emphasise I'm not actually a fan of doing any work at the board in terms of calculation. I've been very critical of Kotov. So it's sort of a little bit, tiny little bit hypocritical to say actually there's a subset of Kotov. But the thing is, Kotov as a system is a very expensive, very laborious, and if you spend all your time calculating variations which are not forced, that's going to be at the expense of strategic considerations. Like how would you find relevant resources for queening a passed pawn, or creating an outside passed pawn, or getting the bishop pair, or getting a knight on d5? You need to give yourself a lot of energy for strategic considerations. So that's why I consider strategic considerations to be the top priority. But there seems to be a place, and I say this, I'm sure I'm going to lose the next few games on the ICC auto pairing. There seems to be a place for at least checking out guaranteed if-then conditions. That's the whole premise behind this new concept called the docking computer. It's not me cheating with an engine. It's just a concept anyone can use legally. You just check out the guaranteed if-then conditions in position, even if they're outrageous, just to get the insights, and then that will let you pounce and anticipate later in that game, because you've got a greater awareness of tactical vulnerabilities. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.